Welcome back to the DFS Sweatshop. I am your host, the DFS Jerusalem. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at DFS Jerusalem. Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the All-Star break festivities, as well as really diving deeply into the MLB tutorials. This week, while we're not focusing on basketball, I'm going to usher you guys into the MLB season that is coming. We know next week on the 24th, that is a Friday, we're going to kick it off with the MLB spring training. First game is going to be starting, but we really want to pay attention to the World Baseball Classic, the WBC, wherever it is. We really want to stay close to that because that's where we're going to see a lot of really good players in action, and we can take our first look at who we were going to be targeting when it comes to our daily fantasy exploits. It was an awesome game as far as the NBA. The All-Star, the Rising Stars Challenge, man. We saw the world team going up against the USA team, and Buddy Hield was on the world team. Is he like foreign or some shit? His name is Buddy. Whatever. But, man, we saw some really nice performances, and if you are a fan of the NBA, this has got to give you assurance that the NBA as a league is going in the right direction. There's a lot of good young players. If you are a fan of the Denver Nuggets, I know you got to be pleased with what you saw from Jamal Murray winning the MVP, as well as if you're a fan of the New York Knicks, man. You can look Chris Stapps, bro. Chris Stapps is a fucking beast, man. He's a boss, bro. Had a really nice game. We saw some Willie Hernan-Gomez. A couple notable performances we had. Dario Saric played very well. I would go into a recap of that game, but this show is going to be more about MLB because, like I said, that stuff is coming. It's coming fast. It's approaching. And we've got to get the newer guys in the sweatshop up to speed because we know wherever there's DFS, there is DFS Sweatshop and our constituents. And we're going to go out and we're going to continue to flex our muscle and our might in the DFS world. We're going to start, man. Now, last night's video, I kind of laid the groundwork, talked a little bit about, basic scoring rules and how a batter can attain points, how pitchers get points, and how important pitching is to your daily fantasy rosters, especially when it comes to DraftKings. There's so many different ways for a pitcher to score. There's so many ways for points to be taken away. So I hope that you watched that video last night and you were able to get a better grasp on just your overall daily roster builds when it comes to fantasy baseball. So we're going to start, and I tell you, I'm going using the DraftKings Playbook series kind of as a guide. A guy named Jonathan Bales, man, really cool guy. I never met him, but from what I can read about him and what I see, and I follow him on Twitter, he's a really solid cat, man. And, while they are the Sharks, and those are multi-entry lineup guys who also influence media and DFS, and we get a lot of what we know, or what we think is going to be the truth and gospel, we get it from these guys. But I got to say, Fantasy Labs is one of those companies that I really have come to like over the years. I really do. I watched some of their stuff and pay attention to when those guys are talking. So a lot of things that those guys say we can actually trust. So Jonathan Bales, man, he writes a series of books called I think it's DFS for Smart Players or something. And a lot of those books are really good. They're really good. There's one that's baseball written. That's an excellent, really a must read. You got to have it. And if you see this Jonathan Bales, you owe me some money because I'm telling 4,000 people to go out and buy your book. So hit me up. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about today, let's talk about scratches in baseball. Because you're probably going to have to do some MLB research before knowing the team's exact lineups. Every day, you got to think, there's 160 some odd games. And one of the most volatile positions when it comes to rest and getting starts are going to, not only pitchers, are going to be the catchers. Those guys are kneeling down for 9 innings or 7 innings a lot of times. And it's a lot of wear and tear on the knees, a lot of wear and tear on the player in general. Plus, they're batting. So you've got to check for the catchers and the backup catchers in games. I know a lot of times Buster Posey was one of those guys from the San Francisco Giants. He would always be tough to gauge if he was going to be starting the game, especially when they were on. They played multiple games in one day sometimes. Sometimes they have 2 sets in one day. So there's always going to be scratches. Catchers frequently, they get rest during the day games when their teams played the night before. You got to always be cautious with your catchers until the lineups are actually released. But the good thing about DraftKings is they have that late swap feature, so you don't be scared off by making the wrong choice when it comes to starting a player knowing a team's lineup for that day. So for the early games, you're always going to have access to the lineup prior to the game's beginning. So you don't. If you do your research, you should be fine. We're going to talk about batting order, because this is a big deal. A big deal in MLB DFS is the batting order. Even if the players who you'd expect to be playing are in the lineup, the order in which they hit is a massive, massive impact on their value. The most important moves are when a player slides down in the batting order. Like say a guy's hitting in the 3-hole, which is a really good spot. A lot of good hitters hit in the 3-hole. If he's sliding down to that 4, 5, 6, then you probably want to give him a second look. Okay, wherever their slot is for the day, a player who's otherwise doesn't play or is late in the order, he frequently offers the value. His price is usually not indicative of the new information that you get regarding a guy in that spot in the batting order. Another thing to consider is how the lineups are structured. If you consider using a player or a batter, it's always best if they're a stud hitting behind him, because that way that guy can score a run. Say you've got a lineup you consider. And you've got a guy in 3-hole that's really good at getting on base. Not a big power guy, but he's really good at getting on base. Well, if the guy behind him is a fucking slugger, that probably is going to have maybe a lower batting percentage, but when he gets up, he can really hit the ball. He can tear the cover off the ball. That's somebody that you want to get. Not the 4 guy, but the 3 guy. Because if that guy's good at getting on base, has a really good on-base percentage, there's a really good chance that he could be knocked in. And even if the guy in the 4-hole hits deep, he hits the sacrifice fly, the guy that you rostered in the 3-hole is going to get in. So that's a very good thing. A very good thing to pay attention to is the batting order. Because you look at it, when it comes to our core 4 roster building strategy, players that we target are going to be hitting in that 1-hole, going to be batting leadoff. They're going to be a guy in the 3, 4, 5 mark. 2s are good, but we don't want to roster those guys with the same frequency that we roster a base stealing, really good bunting, get on base 1 player, a leadoff man, or a really good hitter that's going to be in that 3rd hole, or the power hitter in the 4th that's going to be batting cleanup. Or once the power hitter that bats 4th hits that sacrifice fly, we know that the 5th man on deck is going to be coming in. So that's a really good way to base your lineups. Rarely are you going to be rostering guys that hit 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. In the American League, they do have that DH that bats 9th, but in the National League, the pitcher hits. And you can't get any points whenever a pitcher is batting. So you've got to keep that in mind as well. Next thing we're going to talk about are going to be the splits. When you talk about what hand a guy hits with. Again, splits are incredibly important when you analyze both the hitters and the pitchers. Now, for your arms, it's of course ideal to face an offense primarily the same handings. So if you got a left-handed pitcher, it's good if you know that he's going to be going up against a lot of left-hand batters. If you think about it, when the ball comes off a left-handed pitcher and is being thrown to a left-handed batter, there's not a lot of space to maneuver. It's a short, tight area. So left-handed pitchers have a lot of success against left-handed batters, just as right-handed pitchers would have a lot of success against a right-handed batter. So you want to match those up whenever you're, like, say, when you're hammering out your pitcher, and you look and you see this guy's going to be facing the bulk of the pitchers, the bulk of the hitters in the lineup he's facing are going to be left-handed, and it's a left-handed pitcher. That's good. That's what you want. That's where you want to be. Same thing goes for the right-handed pitchers. If you got a right-handed pitcher, you're going to see a lot of right-handed arms batting. Then you want to go to the right-handed pitcher. You don't want to start a left-handed pitcher unless he's some kind of crazy fucking ace pitcher that's going to be mowing them down. You don't want to start a left-handed pitcher against a bunch of right-handed batters. You don't want to do that. Next thing we're going to talk about is the weather. Now, this is directly related to the MLB lineups. But you can see the weather for each matchup right on the DraftKings contest page. I don't take chances when it comes to the pitchers playing in poor weather. If there's any chance of delay, I will avoid that guy. Since pitchers are a consistent source of fantasy production, it's such a risk to roster a starting pitcher in a game that could see rain. Because you don't want, I'm telling you, you can pay maybe 20% of your DraftKings salary for a pitcher, and the fuck around the game don't play, and you are going to be pissed. So you want to play it really safe when it comes to your pitching. You want to make sure you're going to have first thing I do is I look and see who's in the dome. If I can get some good pitching in the dome where I know it's not going to be any effects from the weather, that's where I'll go. So we want to take real consideration to who he's facing when it comes to his handedness. If he's a left-handed pitcher, he's going to be facing left-handed batters. If he's a right-handed pitcher, he's going to be facing the bulk right-handed batters. And you want to take consideration of the weather and where they're going to be playing. Next thing we're talk about is just working with the limited knowledge. Now, Jonathan Bales mentioned that you'll sometimes need to create your roster without perfect knowledge of the MLB lineups, particularly for games that start late. Now, DraftKings MLB contests usually start around 7 p.m. at a time which is some teams playing on the West Coast have not yet released their lineup cards. This can be an advantage for you if you manage it properly, because DraftKings has a late swap feature. You can start players in late games without hesitation. So that's going to be a strategy from a lot of players to start guys in those late West Coast games. Even if you don't plan to play a guy in a late contest, it is always smart to just take a look at those lineups whenever they come out. Sometimes you see an unexpected scratch that results in a cheaper batter getting spot start or moving up in the lineup. You can always use the late lineup release to your advantage by making a late swap to secure an unexpected value. So a lot of this is really paying attention, to what's going on. My apologies. A lot of this is really predicated on what's going on that day. We've got to stay in tune with the social media outlets that are going to be giving us the information that we need to make sure that we roster according to where we are. Now, there's a few like unwritten rules, man, or written rules. They are rules that it goes. Never roster a pitcher in cores. That is the most contrarian thing to do. We talked about that in the last video. You also want to make sure that every batter that you roster is not going to be facing one of the pitchers that you have. You want to stick to the smaller ball teams, guys that get on base, high on base percentage. Those are things that you're looking for. Now, when it comes to, excuse me, now, yeah, this is very important. Yeah. Now, when it comes to ballparks, right? One of the difficult aspects of determining a park hitter's friendliness is separating the offense from the stadium. A team with an amazing offense or really poor pitchers could make a ballpark look more hitter friendly than what's actually the case. To get a real sense of the park hitter's friendliness, we need to remove the team from the park in some way. To do that, you examine each of the team's totals based on the past 4 seasons. Broken down by home versus away, you can use the total bases because that's a good proxy for DraftKings production. Total bases represent fantasy scoring. Uh, there's even a chart here in the DraftKings playbook, and I want you to look over this, man. This is some really valuable stuff. It definitely shows you, the difference once you separate the players from the team from the actual ballpark, because some parks are really hitter friendly. We talk about Coors Field with the air being so thin up there, man, and balls just travel. We talk about that green monster that was in that's in Boston. Is really hard to get over. There's some fields around some parks around the league that have a short porch, man. The left side is easy to hit a home run. So if a right-handed batter has that short porch over there, he can knock one over. So you gotta get to know all of the fields when it comes to baseball, because they're all different. They all have their own little quirks, their own little things that separate them from each other. We've got to get in tune with those as well. All right. Next thing we're going to be talking about, man, is our complete roster construction, how we are building our DraftKings rosters. Now, I go with my core 4 system where I use the 2 pitchers as one. I'm trying to win the pitching battle. If I can put 2 pitchers together that are going to get me, in a really nice spot in regard to the rest of the field, then my batting can do the rest. Now, we look for value when it comes to pitchers, man. We love guys that are getting their first couple of starts, guys that, have been called up and you don't really know how good they are. People don't really know how good they are. We can start those guys in spots. They're going to be relatively cheap and allow us to pay up for that stud pitcher. I like to get a stud pitcher, at least one, when it comes to, like say, you got early in the season, you've got the Washington Nationals ace. You know what I mean? You got Scherzer. I like to get him in my lineup because everybody's going to own him. and if he goes out and does what he normally does, he mows down 11, 12 guys, then you don't have him, you're going to be sick at the end of the night. So this does limit your batting, but if you roster small ball teams and you can get those cheap base hits and those cheap doubles, cheap singles, maybe a triple here and there, you can definitely make up for not having that second power pitcher. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is going to be the value of stolen bases, because stolen bases are the most overlooked stat in daily fantasy baseball, man. And we think the reason for that is because they're somewhat isolated from the other stats. When a player hits a home run, he gets points for the homer, the RBI, and the run he scored. Meanwhile, a stolen base is the only way that a player can get points where he isn't really at the plate batting. This is once he's already got on base. So think about it. If you got a guy that steals a bag and gets you some points, well, let's say he just hit a single. So in this trip on the field, he got you on base. He got a single. That's 3 points. He steals a bag. That's 8 points. So that's damn near a home. That's close to a home run. That's what makes the leadoff guys, the faster guys, the guys that can get out there and steal bags. That's what makes those guys just as valuable, not even more valuable than the home run hitters, because there's a greater chance that this guy's going to get on base and maybe steal a bag than it is that the guy's going to hit a home run. So we've got to pay attention to that. We've got to get solid lead men in our lineups. There's some spots where you can get 2, 3, sometimes 4 leadoff guys, especially if you got them that are outfielder, like a guy like Trey Turner who plays in the outfield, but he's a leadoff hitter. There's guys that play, second, third base that are leadoff hitters. Outfielders mostly are leadoff hitters when it comes to MLB, but you can get a lot of those guys in your lineups. You don't always have to go for the power hitters. Now, the type of players that steal bases are generally the speedsters who don't often hit for a lot of power. Now, they can be limited in certain ways, but there's an opportunity that comes with seeking those stolen base players. You get the stolen base upside, but you're potentially losing opportunity for upside with power numbers. That's not always the case, but it's a general rule of thumb. The question is simply whether or not it's worth it to pay for stolen bases over power, and in many instances, we think it is. DraftKings awards 5 points for a stolen base, which is the same as a double. It's the same as a double. Plus, you put the 3 points that he already got from getting on base, you're in the money. So, in terms of frequency, man, there are typically around the same number of 30-plus base stealers as there are 30-plus home runs each season. So, there's a handful of players in the league like D. Gordon, Billy Hamilton, Jose Altuve, Jacoby Ellsbury, for example. Those are guys who have serious upside when it comes to steals because they're already a threat to top 60 stolen bases in a given season. Those are the type of players that can really increase the upside of your lineup. Now, one thing is that we can forget about steals. They come in addition to other stats. For a player to steal a bag, he needs to get on base, unless he reaches there like on an error or something. But he's going to get points for reaching the base. If a player singles and steals second, it's actually as many points as you get for a triple on DraftKings. So, like I said before, we've got to really take a look at that. Now, when it comes to predicting the stolen bases, it can be difficult. There's low-frequency events. Although consistent over a large sample, it's very volatile from game to game. It's simply a challenge to predict whether or not a player will steal a bag in a given night. So you might think that the handedness of the opposing pitcher will play a massive role in the predicting stolen bases, but it's really not. It doesn't matter what hand the pitcher is. If a guy can steal a bag, he can steal a fucking bag. Now, overall, the batters are about 23% more likely to steal a bag versus right-handed pitching. Now, that's an important number, but not necessarily a deal breaker when it comes to rostering these base stealers. For one, the catcher has a lot to do with whether or not a runner gets thrown out. You can increase the base stealer's stolen base probability versus southpaws by understanding how he works in tandem with the catcher. Second, you can only realistically predict the handedness of the opposing pitcher when it comes to the starter. A base stealer might face the lefty for 5 or 6 innings before the relief comes in. Because of that uncertainty, we really don't think that there's a reason to always avoid base stealers against southpaws. So that kind of tells you that it doesn't really matter, when you're searching for those base stealers, what handedness the starting pitcher is going to be, because at some point in the game he's going to get pulled out and they're going to bring in another guy. and they're gonna bring another guy. So it could be 4 pitchers that this guy faces. So it really doesn't matter. If you're gonna steal the bag, he's gonna steal the bag. So I really hope that a few of these points have helped you all. Of course, we're going to be doing this series all week where we really get into breaking down the MLB from scoring to the roster builds, everything we need to know to jump into a solid foundation, because that's where the games are won and lost in DFS, in the information. And there's so much baseball information out there that it is not hard to understand. It will not be hard for us to access, and we can use those, especially when we jump into that 4-core roster building strategy that's going to come the next few videos. So this has been your DFS Jerusalem. You can follow me, of course, on Twitter at DFS Jerusalem. Signing off tonight, and the one thing I want you to do in all of your DFS ventures is keep it 300, and in baseball, keep it 130.